creature reaching 43 feet, with eyes the size of dinner plates, was never even filmed alive until this century. No submersible, no research vessel was pointed at the water in December 2025. Just a Japanese fisherman with an ordinary camera, aiming it at the surface in broad daylight. What he caught is still considered genuinely rare. The monster that was actually a real animal all along. Long before any camera existed, sailors across multiple cultures described enormous tentacled creatures capable of dragging ships beneath the waves. The Greek philosopher Aristotle, writing in the 4th century BC, described a large squid he called teuthus, specifically distinguishing it from a smaller, more common squid called teuthus, noting that specimens of the larger animal had reportedly been found as long as 5 ells, an ancient unit of measurement. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, writing roughly 3 centuries later, described a similarly enormous squid in his own Natural History, giving it a head as large as a cask, arms stretching 30 feet long, and a total body weight of roughly 700 pounds. Centuries of sailor accounts describing massive tentacled sea monsters eventually crystallized into the Norwegian legend of the Kraken, a creature said to be large enough to be mistaken for an island and capable of dragging entire ships beneath the waves. Similar tentacled monster legends appeared independently across other seafaring cultures as well, including the Lusca of Caribbean folklore, the Akorokamui of Japanese tradition, and Te Wekea Muturangi in Maori legend from New Zealand, a pattern that suggests real encounters with unusually large squid likely inspired similar monster stories in multiple coastal cultures independently of one another. The species finally received a formal scientific name, Architeuthis, in 1857, when Danish naturalist Japetus Steenstrup examined available evidence and confirmed that a real, giant species of squid genuinely existed, matching many of the old sailor accounts closely enough that Steenstrup himself suggested an earlier, separate description of a mysterious sea monk reported to Danish King Christian III around 1550 may also have actually been a giant squid. That formal scientific naming settled the question of whether the animal existed at all, but it did almost nothing to answer the much harder question of what a living giant squid actually looked like or how it behaved, since virtually every piece of physical evidence available to Steenstrup and the scientists who followed him came from already dead specimens washed ashore or torn apart in fishing nets, never from a living, swimming animal observed directly in its own natural deep-sea habitat. Why giant squid almost never get filmed alive? Giant squid live primarily in deep, cold ocean water, generally believed to inhabit depths reaching several hundred meters below the surface, far below where sunlight penetrates, and far below where an ordinary boat, diver, or fishing camera would ever naturally encounter one under normal circumstances. Despite the species' enormous size, more than 580 individual giant squid had washed ashore or turned up dead in fishing nets across the world since the 16th century, giving marine biologists a reasonably solid understanding of the animal's basic size and anatomy, long before anyone ever managed to observe a living, swimming specimen in its own natural habitat. That gap, plenty of dead specimens but almost no living observations, reflects a combination of genuine depth, genuine darkness, and the animal's own extraordinarily sensitive eyesight. Giant squid possess the largest eyes of any known animal, built specifically to detect the faintest scraps of available light in near total darkness, which means the animal is also exceptionally good at detecting and avoiding the bright lights carried by nearly every submersible, remotely operated vehicle, or diving expedition ever sent looking for it. Researchers studying the species have noted directly that this sensitivity works against observation efforts in a very specific way, since the same traits that let a giant squid survive in the deep ocean also let it see approaching research equipment long before that equipment can see the squid back. John Ablett of London's Natural History Museum has explained this problem in even more direct terms, noting that giant squid cannot actually get the oxygen they need once they reach the surface, meaning anytime researchers do encounter a live one there, it is almost always because the animal is already stressed and in the process of dying. That basic problem, an animal too sensitive to light to tolerate the exact tools scientists needed to study it, remained essentially unsolved for the entire 20th century, right up until a specific pair of Japanese researchers finally managed to capture the first confirmed photographic evidence of a living giant squid in the wild. The first time anyone ever saw one alive in September 2004, zoologist Tsunemi Kubodera of Japan's National Science Museum and Kyoichi Mori of the Ogasawara Whale Watching Association successfully photographed a living giant squid in its natural deep-sea habitat for the first time in recorded history. Working near the Ogasawara Islands, the pair used a baited fishing line stretching down roughly 1,000 meters with an attached camera designed to record whatever approached the bait in the darkness below. Their resulting images, 500 photographs in total, showed a 26-foot giant squid aggressively engulfing the bait at a depth of roughly 900 meters, in an encounter that lasted more than 4 hours before the animal finally tore itself free, leaving behind a 5.5-meter section of one feeding tentacle still attached to the researchers' equipment when they hauled it back to the surface. Remarkably, the severed tentacle's suckers were still gripping and functioning, even after being separated from the rest of the animal's body. And Kubodera later described the sensation of the still-functioning tentacle gripping his own hand as genuinely striking. DNA testing on that recovered tentacle later confirmed a 99.7% match to Architeuthis ducks, providing rock-solid genetic confirmation that the animal photographed truly was a giant squid rather than some other unrelated species. One researcher involved in the project reportedly described the achievement as the holy grail of deep-sea animals, reflecting just how significant this single encounter felt after decades of failed attempts by other research teams around the world. That specific detail, an animal aggressively attacking bait rather than simply drifting passively nearby, also carried real scientific weight beyond the historic nature of the photographs themselves. For years, some researchers had theorized that giant squid might hunt primarily through trickery, hovering motionless with tentacles extended and waiting for unsuspecting prey to blunder into range. The 2004 images showing active, aggressive pursuit of bait began shifting that picture toward an image of a considerably more agile, actively hunting predator. That 2004 breakthrough answered the basic question of whether a giant squid could be photographed alive at all. It did not yet answer a considerably harder question, whether researchers could ever actually capture the animal on video, watch it move under its own power, and eventually even see it alive at the surface with their own eyes, rather than only through a remote camera lowered on a line. The squid that came up fighting. On December 4, 2006, Kubodera's team achieved exactly that, hooking an adult giant squid at a depth of roughly 650 meters near the Ogasawara Islands and pulling it to the surface alive, marking the first time any human being had ever laid eyes directly on a living giant squid at the water's surface. The animal, a female measuring roughly 24 feet long and weighing about 50 kilograms, was recorded on video, waving its arms and ejecting large volumes of water from its funnel as researchers worked to bring it aboard their research vessel. The squid ultimately died during the difficult process of capture. Its injuries likely worsened after researchers briefly lost their grip on it partway through hauling it in. Kubodera described the moment of finally seeing the animal alive at the surface as shining and so beautiful, adding that his team's confidence in eventually succeeding came from years of methodically researching exactly where and when to expect an encounter based on accumulated data from the surrounding waters. That successful capture came almost exactly 2 years after the same general research effort had first begun searching this specific stretch of ocean, following 3 full years of expeditions that had, until that point, produced nothing beyond the earlier photographic encounter. This encounter mattered scientifically well beyond the historic thrill of finally seeing a living giant squid up close. Kubodera noted publicly afterward that the experience suggested giant squid might actually be more common in these waters than researchers had previously assumed, since his team's accumulated data had allowed them to predict roughly where and when an encounter was likely, rather than relying purely on chance. That successful 2006 capture, dramatic and scientifically significant as it was, still fell short of the one remaining, considerably more difficult goal researchers in this same field had been chasing for years: capturing footage of a giant squid swimming freely on its own, deep in its natural habitat, without ever being hooked, hauled, or otherwise directly interfered with by researchers at all. If you're enjoying this deep dive, hitting subscribe means you won't miss the next one. The footage that finally showed one swimming free in July 2012. A research team from Japan's National Science Museum Working jointly with Japanese public broadcaster NHK, the United States Discovery Channel, and support from the National Science Foundation, successfully filmed a live giant squid swimming freely in its natural deep-sea habitat for the first time in recorded history, again working in the waters near the Ogasawara Islands, where the same research group had already made its 2 previous breakthroughs. Using a specially designed submersible carrying an ultra-sensitive low-light camera system, the team located the animal at a depth of roughly 630 meters, filming it as it held onto and fed on bait while swimming actively against the surrounding current. That footage represented a genuinely different kind of achievement compared to the earlier 2004 photographs or the 2006 surface capture, since this time the animal was never hooked, hauled, or brought anywhere near the surface at all, observed instead entirely on its own terms, swimming and feeding naturally in the exact deep water environment where it actually lives. Kubodera, reflecting on the achievement, noted that researchers around the world had attempted this same basic feat for years, using various methods, all without success, before his team's specific combination of accumulated location data and specialized low-light camera technology finally worked. That same broader research effort, 3 separate milestones achieved by essentially the same core Japanese research group across an 8-year span, from first photographs in 2004 to first live surface capture in 2006 to first fully natural swimming footage in 2012, established the foundational body of direct observational evidence that every subsequent giant squid encounter, including the 2019 Gulf of Mexico footage and the December 2025 footage from an ordinary fisherman's camera, has been able to build upon and compare against. The camera built specifically to find one. A separate and equally important breakthrough came from marine biologist Edith Witter, founder of the Florida-based Ocean Research and Conservation Association, who spent years developing a specialized camera system called the Medusa, specifically to solve the light sensitivity problem directly, without needing to rely on a baited hook capable of physically capturing or injuring the animal. The Medusa uses red light, a wavelength invisible to most deep-sea creatures, paired with a lure called an E-jelly, designed to mimic the bioluminescent display of a specific deep-sea jellyfish species known to trigger defensive light flashes when attacked. Some larger deep-sea predators have learned to watch for that exact kind of jellyfish distress signal as an indication that easy prey might be nearby, and Witter's team built the Medusa specifically to exploit that same natural behavior pattern. Witter was part of the same broader 2012 expedition team, working alongside Kubodera in Japanese waters, and her own accumulated years of prior research and public advocacy, including an earlier TED Talk that helped raise her public profile, eventually led to a 2006 MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant, recognizing her work developing exactly this kind of specialized deep-sea observation technology. In June 2019, that same Medusa system successfully recorded the first confirmed giant squid ever filmed in United States waters, spotted in the Gulf of Mexico roughly 100 miles southeast of New Orleans by independent researcher Nathan Robinson, who was reviewing archived footage from the Medusa system when a tentacle shape slowly crept into frame after more than 120 hours of otherwise unremarkable video. The juvenile squid, measured at roughly 10 to 12 feet long, wrapped its tentacles briefly around the camera equipment before quickly retreating once it apparently realized the glowing lure was not genuine food. That specific behavior, actively investigating and striking at what looked like potential prey rather than simply drifting passively nearby, gave researchers further direct evidence supporting the theory, already suggested back in 2004, that giant squid actively hunt and track potential targets rather than functioning purely as passive, stationary predators waiting for food to drift toward them. That same active hunting behavior, confirmed through a specialized scientific camera built specifically to trigger it, sets up an important comparison for understanding exactly what made the December 2025 footage from an ordinary fisherman's camera feel so genuinely unusual to the researchers who reviewed it afterward. The day a fisherman's camera caught something rare. In December 2025, a Japanese fisherman, using the online handle Yon Morik Ota, captured video footage of 2 giant squid at the ocean's surface off the coast of southern Japan, one of them appearing to actively feed on the other. The footage, originally posted to Instagram before spreading further on YouTube, showed a live, apparently healthy, Architeuthis duck specimen behaving in a way researchers described as a genuinely rare encounter, since giant squid almost never appear at the surface in daylight, and healthy-looking specimens observed actively feeding are rarer still. Duke University biology professor Sankey Johnson, commenting publicly on this general category of giant squid sightings, emphasized that the animal deserves to be understood as a real, living part of the natural world, rather than treated purely as a myth. He has pointed out that people should think of the giant squid the same way they think of any other confirmed animal on the planet, not as some exotic creature discovered thousands of miles away in an unknown deep, but as a genuine resident of oceans people already interact with directly. That same basic sentiment, that giant squid are real, confirmed, and still surprising even to trained scientists, runs through nearly every documented encounter with this species over the past 2 decades, from Kubodera's original 2004 photographs through this most recent piece of Fisherman captured footage. What makes this new Japanese footage different? Every previous confirmed giant squid encounter described so far required either a dedicated deep-sea camera system lowered hundreds of meters below the surface, a baited hook specifically designed to capture the animal, or a direct scientific expedition organized around specialized submersible technology. The December 2025 footage broke from that pattern entirely, showing a giant squid at the ocean's surface, in daylight, filmed by an ordinary fisherman, using nothing more specialized than a standard camera pointed off the side of his boat. That surface appearance alone is what researchers and reporting on the footage flagged as genuinely rare, since giant squid living at significant ocean depths only reach the surface under unusual circumstances, historically often associated with sick, dying, or already dead animals drifting upward, rather than a healthy individual actively engaged in normal feeding behavior. Exactly the pattern the Natural History Museum's John Ablett described regarding the animal's inability to properly breathe once it reaches shallow water. The specific behavior captured in this footage, one squid appearing to actively feed on a smaller squid at the surface, added a further layer of significance, since it suggested a genuinely active, healthy animal engaged in ordinary predatory behavior rather than a weakened or dying specimen simply washing up passively. Coverage of the footage explicitly noted this specific detail as standing out compared to other rare surface sightings, describing the animal as appearing to be in noticeably better condition than some previous documented cases of giant squid spotted near the surface. Understanding exactly why a healthy giant squid rising to the surface at all counts as such an unusual event requires looking more closely at the basic biology, keeping this species confined to deep water in the first place. The biology behind why they rarely surface. Giant squid are adapted specifically for life in deep, dark, cold water, relying on their enormous eyes to detect faint traces of light and bioluminescent signals from potential prey and predators alike, in an environment where direct sunlight never reaches. Moving into shallow, bright surface water represents a significant departure from that normal environment, exposing the animal to lighting conditions, oxygen availability, and pressure changes considerably different from what its body and senses evolved to handle. Historically, most documented giant squid encounters at or near the surface, including the 2006 capture itself, have involved animals that were already sick, injured, dying, or dead, drifting upward passively rather than choosing to surface under their own healthy volition. That historical pattern is exactly why a report specifically describing an apparently healthy, actively feeding giant squid at the surface stood out enough to generate genuine scientific interest and media coverage, rather than simply being filed alongside the more routine and considerably sadder pattern of already dying animals occasionally washing up or drifting into shallow water where a fisherman or beachgoer might happen to spot them. Exactly why this particular animal came to the surface while still apparently healthy and actively feeding remains something researchers reviewing the footage have not definitively explained, an open question that fits within a much broader pattern of genuine scientific uncertainty still surrounding this species even after multiple confirmed video encounters over the past 2 decades. That same uncertainty extends to understanding just how large these specific animals can actually grow, a question worth answering clearly given how much confusion and exaggeration tends to surround giant squid-size claims in general. How big these animals actually get, according to measurements compiled by the Smithsonian Institution from confirmed specimens, The largest giant squid ever formally recorded by scientists measured close to 43 feet long, including its extended feeding tentacles, and may have weighed over a ton, though some older, less rigorously documented historical claims of specimens reaching 20 meters or more have never been scientifically confirmed. Recent size estimates place the maximum length at roughly 13 meters for females and 10 meters for males, measured from the rear fins to the tip of the longer tentacles, with the main body, or mantle, itself rarely exceeding about 2 meters even on the largest confirmed individuals, meaning the vast majority of a giant squid's dramatic overall length actually comes from its long, trailing feeding tentacles rather than its comparatively modest central body. The species' most distinctive anatomical feature remains its enormous eyes, among the largest of any animal on the planet at roughly 10 inches in diameter, evolved specifically to maximize light detection in near-total darkness. Giant squid also possess a sharp, bird-like beak, capable of shredding prey, and 8 arms plus 2 considerably longer feeding tentacles, lined with sucker discs used to grip and secure food before drawing it toward that beak. Despite that intimidating anatomy, every confirmed scientific encounter with a living giant squid, from the 2004 photographs through the 2019 Gulf of Mexico footage, has described an animal exhibiting cautious, investigative behavior rather than any kind of sustained, aggressive attack on the humans or equipment involved, a pattern consistent with an animal built to hunt smaller natural prey, like deep-sea fish, rather than to pose any genuine direct threat to people. That same conversation about giant squid size and behavior frequently gets tangled up with a separate, related species that shares a superficially similar reputation but represents an entirely distinct animal with its own separate, and even more recently documented, discovery story. The colossal squid, a different animal people confuse with this one. The colossal squid, scientifically named Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni, is frequently confused with the giant squid in casual conversation, but according to London's Natural History Museum, the two represent entirely separate species belonging to different squid families altogether. The giant squid features longer, more slender tentacles attached to a comparatively narrower body, while the colossal squid carries a considerably larger, bulkier body paired with shorter tentacles, along with a distinctive set of rotating hooks located specifically on the middle sections of its arms, a feature the giant squid does not possess. The colossal squid was first formally identified and named back in 1925, based entirely on remains recovered from the stomachs of sperm whales and from specimens caught incidentally by fishing vessels targeting other species, without a single living individual ever observed directly in its natural deep-sea habitat for the entire following century. That changed on March 9, 2025, when a research team aboard the Schmidt Ocean Institute's vessel Falkor, working near the South Sandwich Islands in the South Atlantic Ocean, used a remotely operated vehicle called Sebastian to capture the first ever confirmed video footage of a live colossal squid in the wild, a juvenile measuring just under 12 inches long, filmed at a depth of roughly 600 meters. Kat Bolstad, a squid researcher at the Auckland University of Technology who helped independently verify the footage, noted that for the entire previous century, scientists had only encountered this species as prey remains recovered from whale and seabird stomachs, or occasionally as bycatch pulled up by fishing vessels targeting other species entirely, making this specific 2025 sighting the very first genuine glimpse of the animal alive and moving through its own natural environment. Adult colossal squid are estimated to reach lengths of up to roughly 23 feet and weights as high as 1,100 pounds, making the species the heaviest invertebrate known to science, even though its overall body length runs shorter than the giant squid's considerably longer, more slender tentacled form. Researcher Aaron Evans, who also helped verify the 2025 footage, noted directly that despite their fearsome reputation, colossal squid are not actually apex predators, since juveniles fall prey to elephant seals and penguins, while sperm whales and sleeper sharks hunt older individuals, though scarring documented on many sperm whales suggests these squid put up a genuinely difficult fight before losing. That distinction, one squid built long and slender, the other built shorter and considerably heavier, is worth understanding clearly, since both animals continue to generate the same kind of dramatic, sometimes exaggerated public fascination, regardless of which specific species a given piece of footage actually shows. What scientists still don't know about giant squid behavior. Despite the genuine progress represented by the 2004 photographs, the 2006 surface capture, the 2012 natural habitat video, the 2019 Gulf of Mexico footage, and now the December 2025 Fisherman's footage from Japan, researchers still have only a handful of confirmed direct observations of live giant squid behavior to work from, compared against decades of study built almost entirely on dead, beached, or incidentally captured specimens. John Ablett of the Natural History Museum has stated plainly that scientists still do not know how giant squid mate, how long individual animals actually live, or exactly how they grow, describing the species as remaining highly mysterious even now, decades after its formal scientific confirmation. The specific question raised by the December 2025 footage, exactly why an apparently healthy giant squid would choose to surface and actively feed in daylight, rather than remaining in its normal deep-water habitat, remains genuinely unanswered as of now. Researchers reviewing similar rare surface sightings have generally been cautious about drawing firm conclusions from any single encounter, since one video, however striking, cannot on its own establish whether this specific behavior represents a rare but normal part of the species' natural life cycle or some kind of unusual situational circumstance specific to that particular animal on that particular day. That same honest uncertainty, genuine excitement over new footage paired with real, unresolved questions about what it actually means, reflects exactly where scientific understanding of this species currently stands. More than 2 decades after the very first confirmed photograph of a living giant squid ever existed at all, here is where things actually stand. Giant squid inspired sea monster legends across multiple independent cultures for centuries, formally described as early as Aristotle in the 4th century BC, and finally given a scientific name, Architeuthis, by Japetus Steenstrup in 1857, though no living specimen was ever observed directly until Tsunemi Kubodera and Kyoichi Mori captured the first confirmed photographs in September 2004. Kubodera's same research group achieved the first live surface capture in December 2006, followed by the first footage of a giant squid swimming freely in its natural deep-sea habitat in July 2012, working alongside NHK and the Discovery Channel. Marine biologist Edith Witter's specially designed Medusa camera system later captured the first confirmed giant squid footage in United States waters in June 2019, footage that itself proved the species actively hunts rather than simply waiting passively for prey to drift by. In December 2025, a Japanese fisherman using the online handle Yon Morikota filmed rare footage of a giant squid at the ocean's surface in daylight, appearing to actively feed on a smaller squid, an encounter researchers and reporters described as significant, specifically because giant squid almost never surface while healthy, and healthy animals actively feeding at the surface remain rarer still. Confirmed specimens have measured up to roughly 43 feet long and over a ton in weight, while a separate, frequently confused species, the colossal squid, was only filmed alive for the first time in March 2025 near the South Sandwich Islands, a full century after it was first formally identified from whale stomach remains alone. Despite all of this genuine progress, scientists still have only a small handful of confirmed live observations of either species to work from, leaving basic questions about their normal behavior, mating, and lifespan genuinely open. None of what that fisherman's camera caught required anything beyond an animal already known to science simply doing something researchers have almost never had the chance to actually witness firsthand. That gap between a species fully confirmed to exist since 1857 and a species almost never actually observed alive until the 21st century is exactly what makes one ordinary fisherman's camera capable of adding something genuinely new to more than a century and a half of scientific study. If this kind of deep ocean mystery is your thing, subscribing helps more of these stories reach you the moment they come out.